Welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator in VR. That's right guys, it is actually here and I can finally talk about it after flying in this sim in VR for over 50 hours, which hopefully makes this video quite useful for you, because I'm going to talk about my first impressions, the good and the bad, and also maybe give you some tweaks and tips with your settings. This is a beast of a sim, guys, and if you're expecting to run this at Ultra, even with a 3090 card, you're going to be very disappointed. Don't be though, because literally this sim is an investment. It's meant to last a long time, guys, with different hardware iterations. This is just the start of the process. However, what do I think? What's my raw first impressions? I'm not going to make you wait, guys. I think, personally, there are times in this sim when I'm in VR when it is literally brain-tricking real. It's the only way I can describe it, guys. I've been trying to think of a way to describe it. And really, it's just like being in a real aircraft. I was actually lucky and I went flying not so long ago in a Cessna 172. And I did the same flight in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and oh my god, I think the core VR experience in this sim is the best that there is, without question. That is down to the clever lighting engine, the graphics engine, and just that overall atmosphere of being inside an aircraft in VR. It does it better than any other sim out there with the core platform. That's the good news. The bad news is we don't have motion controller support. Now, for me, that's a big deal, because part of the VR experience is reaching around the cockpit and actually sort of, you know, directing your hand exactly where that particular lever or button or whatever it was, you know, the nav systems, the FMS, the overhead panels, be able to physically move your hand and your body around the cockpit is a big part of VR, and that is missing in this sim. Unfortunately, all you have is a 3D mouse. Now, trust me guys, I'm going to be completely honest here. I'm one of many beta testers that have been screaming our heads off in the forums that we need motion controller support. But unfortunately, it's fallen on deaf ears right now. But you know, I don't want to get too negative about this, because I do feel that they've worked really hard to bring an incredible first release of VR in this sim. Now, motion controllers aside for a moment, the mouse actually works really well, and if you're used to sims like DCS, then you're not going to have much of a problem. And I know there's many of you out there that actually don't use motion controllers, so it won't even be an issue for you. Although I really do hope that later on control support will be implemented. Now, as you can see here, we're actually flying over the Lake District in the Flying Iron Spitfire. I'm using the Windows Mixed Reality mirror, because unfortunately there's no really other way of recording VR in this sim right now, so apologies if you don't like the quality, but trust me, in the headset, as we're flying around here, we are getting 30 frames per second. Now, I know you're going to be thinking, what? That's terrible. But that's all you need in this sim now. I think one of the biggest deals that I've found in this sim is Windows Mixed Reality have been working really hard with the flight sim community actually as well in the beta process to give you a third frame for your asynchronous motion projection. That basically means that you can go down to 30 frames per second and have fluid motion. That is a huge deal. I can't emphasize that enough, guys, and I'm going to show you how to enable that in this video. So with the likes of the REVERB G2, it means that we really want that high resolution display in VR, and of course that does take a hit. And in fact, actually, I've found that the REVERB G2 really hits performance worse than it does in X-Plane 11. I think the reason for that is Windows Mixed Reality. If you're using that instead of Steam VR, your super sampling settings or your actual native resolution is displayed properly, which means that you're going to have to turn down your render scaling. And in fact, I'm actually underscaling my headset which I know is pretty bad news, but to be honest, it's still better for me than the quality of the Rift S, even with super sampling, because you don't get any screen door. You get that beautiful rich coloured palette that the IPS panel gives you in the Reverb G2, and of course you get that amazing audio as well. Having said that, guys, honestly, the Rift S is a brilliant VR headset for this sim. In fact, it's pretty damn close to the Reverb G2 in terms of sort of the visual clarity, and what the Rift S does give you is that lower resolution, so you can bump up your render scale, get a pretty sharp image. The only problem is that the Oculus asynchronous time warp motion projection jitters around, so you can go down to 20 frames per second in the Rift S, so you've got 10 frames buffer over the Reverb G2. But what that does mean is that sometimes it will jitter from 20 to 27 and 30 and 35 and back down to 20 again. So really, it's what we need is an OVR tool for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now what the OVR tool does in X-Plane is lock your asynchronous time warp to 27 frames per second, and that gives you smooth projection. If we get a tool for that in the future from the flight sim community, honestly guys, I think the Rift S will win over the Reverb G2. That is saying something, honestly. Now, sorry guys, this is a bit of a technical video, but unfortunately Microsoft Flight Simulator is an absolute beast of a sim that will use every single bit of your hardware. Well, actually it won't, because it's not quite optimized enough yet, and I think VR has really shown that. There is some ways to go. But as I say, the overall experience in this sim is brain tricking real, guys. There is times where I'm flying, above in the clouds, or as you see here, flying the Spitfire, and flying through storms and rain showers, seeing the rain on your canopy, and just seeing the beautiful terrain and the sky colours. It's absolutely magnificent, and it's gonna really cheer us all up, guys. Honestly, I don't want to get too deep into this, but I feel this sim in VR is going to be one of those sims. Not only will it feel incredibly realistic, but it will actually really uplift your mood, and I think we all need that right now. So honestly, this is the biggest thing to happen in the flight sim community for VR. I still feel that X-Plane 11 beats Microsoft Flight Simulator for its core VR implementation. It is the best, and it's why X-Plane will still be on my hard drive. There's no reason why both sims can't be in the VR genre, the VR space together. Use both of them, support both of them, because it's going to, benefit all of us in the long run. Anyway guys, that's enough footage and rambling of my first experiences. I'm now going to go into the settings menu and talk about what I'm using and what I've decided after literally 50 hours of tearing my hair out, messing around with settings. What works for me might not work for you, but it will give you a good guide. So let's get cracking into the VR settings menu and check it out. Okay, so welcome in the sim. We are now in non-VR mode, so you can really have a look at what different tabs you're going to expect to see once you install VR. Now, a huge big plus here for Sobo, thank you for doing this if you're listening, is that we have got a separate graphics slider for VR, which, I've always wanted that for X-Plane, because sometimes I actually, surprise surprise, love flying out of VR. Sometimes I like to kick back and just really enjoy flying on a monitor. You might be surprised to hear that, but I do enjoy that. But I don't want to keep messing around with my settings, because it takes time to get that perfect sweet spot for your system. So to have two different options here is brilliant. I love it. So I'm going to go through my settings first. Now, I'm going to start with this, the render scale slider. This is the biggest slider, the biggest impact you're going to have on frame rate in this sim, and it's the one that you're going to absolutely hate because it's basically a bit of like a resolution scaler for VR, really. So if you're, say, using the Rift S, you can bump this up to about 100 and put your own super sampling in, say, the tray tool or in your debug Ocular software to about 1.2, 1.3, and you get a nice image, actually a really nice image. But if you're using the Reverb G2, guys, you're not going to be able to run this at 100% render scaling. Not even with the latest graphics cards. I'm sorry, I know it's bad news, but I've got to tell you now, so you don't have to waste your time thinking, why am I getting 15 frames per second? The best you're going to get, probably, depending on your system, is either 80 or 70%. Now, this is the thing I really want to tell you guys. This is what I've decided. This is my conclusion after 50 hours of flying. This is how I'm going to do it, right? I am going to, when I'm flying business jets and airliners, and when I'm doing sort of long haul flights, I'm going to set my render scaling to either 70 or 80%. That means I'm not going to be able to sort of use motion projection, which means I'm going to get terrain jittering. But to be honest, when my head's in the cockpit or I'm flying really high up, you're not going to notice it. If you're flying above, say, 2,000 feet, you're not going to notice the terrain jittering so much. So, you know, that's where sort of the visual clarity is the most important aspect of the flight. So I bumped up to 80. Now, say if I'm flying like you've just seen in the Spitfire, I'm actually going to back that off to about 60%. Now, that means the image is going to suffer. But the core fact of this is your head's going to be out of the cockpit. You're going to be looking at the terrain. You're going to be focusing on the VFR experience. Now, for that, actually, it's really sharp and retains that sort of far distance, particularly in the G2. And the upshot of that is you're going to be then inside the motion projection of the 30 frames per second, which, by the way, guys, is, if I can hang on a second, it's this one here, OpenXR. You need this, guys. You need to download this. It's in your Microsoft Store app. It might not appear unless your Reverb G2 is connected. I've noticed that a few times. You need to make sure that use latest preview OpenXR runtime is set to on. And there you'll have the latest 30 frames per second third frame goodness. That is the sort of developer of this. It's honestly, it's brilliant. So in here you will have three options. I've set mine to automatic. You can have it set to always on or disabled. Guys, honestly, just play around with this yourselves and see what best works for you. But for me, I have that on automatic, and then all I have to do then is, depending on the type of flying I'm doing, either set my render scale to 60 or to about 70 or 80. So I'll reiterate, guys, if I'm flying VFR, I don't need to look at my instruments so much. To be honest, I still can see them really well. It's not terrible, but you know, if I'm VFR flying, 60 or even 50 will give you a super smooth fluid motion. If you are flying business jets and airliners, you're going to definitely need it to about 70 or 80. I know, guys, you're probably thinking, oh, this sucks. It's not the best news, but this is VR in the most complex sim that we have right now in terms of graphics and pushing your PC to the max. My system is an i5-8600K running at 5 GHz with a 1080 Ti card, and this is what I can do. Right then, back to the settings, and Melissa has bought me a coffee. I really need it, because this is quite a complex thing, guys. I hope you're still with me. If you are, thank you so much. And by the way, Merry Christmas, you know, Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 is a better year. Anyway, so, anti-aliasing, well, I never say that right, but, you know, I keep that on TAA. Honestly, keep it there as well. It's one of those frustrating things that if I had it off or had it on FXAA or even DLAA, you would have a massive performance impact, but the visuals are awful. You get such bad shimmering, particularly in the G2 as well, when you notice it some more because you've got that high resolution. It's just not worth going there. Keep it at TAA. But again, guys, all of this is just a my own sort of take on this. You will be tinkering around over Christmas and messing about. Just make sure you spend some time with your family. But this hopefully will give you some idea of what I'm doing anyway. Terrain level of detail. I've messed around with this, and to be honest, I haven't noticed much of a difference in FPS. I'm actually going to set this higher for my next videos to around 150, I think, because we know the Reverb G2, you can see it a lot further out than in the Rift S, so you do notice that level of terrain detail, and it makes a difference to your immersion. And to be honest, I don't notice a massive difference in performance. Now, buildings definitely makes a difference, so does trees, and grass and bushes, oh yes, that makes a massive difference to your performance, I'm afraid. But if you set it at low, you still get a very nice grass effect, and you know, you get some nice sort of trees and bushes around. It looks good enough. Again, object level detail is a bit for me like the terrain level of detail. I don't notice much of a difference in frame rate, but I have kept it to around 100 because when you're quite high up, you don't notice so much. But again, play around with that one. Volumetric Clouds. This is one of those ones that actually I think Asobo have nailed. I do feel the weather generation and, you know, the volumetric clouds are really well optimized. I don't find a massive difference in performance between medium and high for me personally, and the difference in visual clarity in terms of how the clouds look are huge. You know, they look so much more lifelike when you leave them on high, and I think for me, VR in this sim, part of the, you know, a huge part of the experience is flying in weather and clouds, so I'm willing to take that hit on performance. Now, if you put it to ultra, actually there is quite a bit of a difference between high and ultra rather than medium and high, so I keep that at that level for me personally. Texture resolution, well, to be honest, actually I don't know why it's on high. I like to have it on ultra because I've got 11 gigs of VRAM on my 1080 Ti card, and to be honest, that's more of a GPU based sort of thing, so I'm quite happy to leave that at ultra. For the filtering side of things, well, you know, 2 times or 4 times is fine. I find 4 times give you that bit of a sort of sharper image, you know, of the terrain further out, and in headsets like the Reverb G2 you will notice it. If you've got a Rift S, I'd leave it at 2 times to be honest. Texture super sampling, now you've noticed a lot of this stuff is either off or low, because this is some of the stuff that really makes a difference to performance. Unfortunately, guys, you are going to have to accept, and this is something I've really struggled with, you know, you're going to have to lower your settings, guys, honestly. But because you're in VR, you don't necessarily notice that degradation in performance like you would on a monitor, because you're just too busy loving it in VR, because it looks better in VR. I guess what I mean is lower settings in VR looks better than ultra settings on a monitor. I think that's kind of what I'm saying here. So these are all my settings here for super sampling, texture synthesis. Waves, that's another one that can kill your FPS, but I do love the effects, so I've gone for medium sort of, you know, setting there. Shadows for me, you know, it's never been a big deal for me, shadows in a flight sim, to be honest, and I know that's a bit of a strange thing to say. Some of you will be like, what are you talking about? Shadows is the most important thing you've ever come across. That's fine, but for me personally, shadows is something that often kills your performance, and it's such a minor thing. I like to see the shadows, but I'm not bothered if they're completely 100%, you know, sharp. So I've left these quite low, to be honest, or even off. Which I just find works well for my setup. Right, I'm going to try whiz through these as much as possible, because I'm aware that this video is going to be long, and you want to get in and try it for yourselves, and you probably already have, which I'm hopefully you have. You've just gone straight into it, because that's what I did. Windshield effects, that has hardly any impact on performance, and I love to see those rain effects. That's on ultra, keeping that there. This is a big one, guys. These next 3 are huge. Ambient occlusion, for whatever reason, has a huge impact on performance in VR, so I've just switched it off. Reflections, I don't know, to be honest, about that one, but I've got it off for now, but I kind of mess around with that one, but I don't really know so much about that one. Light shafts does have a huge impact on performance, but it looks so good and I want it on, and it's just so annoying. So what I've done is I've kept it at low, and even at low, this setting here, you can see you know, a difference. And what light shaft means basically is the sunlight shining onto nearby surfaces and nearby clouds, so you'll get that sort of shadowing and light effect on different layers of cloud. That is a huge feature in this sim, and I can't live without it. So I'm happy to take the frame rate hit there by just keeping it on low, which still looks spectacular. Light bloom, well, again, that doesn't have much of an impact. It used to have in the old days, but not so much now. I keep that on. And all these off here, lens flare makes no difference, to be honest, in terms of performance, but it just looks rubbish. I've just left all those off. And glass cockpit refresh rate, that's the last one, guys. That is a massive difference in terms of performance. If you're using the G3000 displays, they do kill performance. So I find medium or even low, which you can notice the lag in a display, unfortunately. If you're flying IFR, guys, then you just shove it up to high because you're not going to notice the terrain juddering. But if you're sort of VFR flying with the glass cockpits, then keep that to medium. But I think the first thing to do after trying this, if you're still getting bad performance, is just knock this down, because it's probably the biggest thing that will make the impact and have the, without actually noticing the graphical sort of differences in the sim. Right, whew, we're nearly there, guys. VR traffic is another one. I'm so pleased it's got its own menu system. And to be honest, I always leave mine to real-time online. If you go for AI offline, you're going to get a performance impact. You really are. In terms of leisure boats and road traffic, I don't find that makes too much of an impact, but I've kept them fairly low anyway. These are my settings here. Now, the last one here is the VR mode. And what I've done here is you're going to want to bind the VR toolbar toggle to your joystick or yoke, because you're going to need that. I'm going to actually post a separate video talking about the menu systems. This is really about the first impressions and my setup. But yeah, I'd recommend toggling that. I actually have that toggle to my CH Eclipse yoke so that you can quickly access the main menu toolbar, which is in VR. And of course, to get into VR, if you don't realise, because actually I didn't realise to start with, and it wasn't bound to my sim, and I was thinking it doesn't work, it's actually Control and Tab, but you can change that again to something else. The next, I think the only other one, really, the two here that's worth mentioning is your sort of centre view, which it will tell you in the sim when you get into VR anyway, is press a spacebar. I've left that spacebar because it's easy to find even when I'm in VR. And the zoom button, which is your right mouse button, which you'll definitely need, guys, even with the Reverb G2. I do think some of the cockpits, the scaling is a bit small, the text is a bit small compared to X-Plane, and that really does make the resolution suffer. Okay, and the last thing I've got to say, really, is your graphics driver. Now, I can only say from an NVIDIA point of view, but something that I have been testing out is the different drivers. And in fact, I've settled on an old driver from August, which I think mine's 456-06. Something like that. But anyway, it's the August driver. Go check it out. Do you know what? And this is, I don't know what's going on here with NVIDIA, but the last couple of drivers, at the time it's recording, in December, have been atrocious. I think what's going on is that there's new AAA titles coming out, and they're tweaking and messing around with the drivers, particularly for the 30 series cards. And then us flight simmers are left in the dust and left in the wake of all the problems. The last known driver to work for me is actually the one that was released when Microsoft Flight Simulator was released, perhaps because that's when they were more aware of it. So for now, I would actually recommend rolling back your driver to at least somewhere around August, maybe September time. I know it sucks, guys, but seriously, it's worth your time, because for me, I've had a pretty much a 10 frame rate difference, which I know doesn't sound much, but when you're in VR, that is a lot. Oh, right, guys, take a break. That's a hell of a lot of information. I will try and do my best over the Christmas period to be active in the comments section, and please feel free to, let me know how you get on. I'm going to be posting plenty of VR content over the coming weeks, including a very special new scenery from Pilot Plus. But for now, guys, I think that's going to be it for this video. I hope that is of some use. As I say, that's a lot of information in there. So yeah, take your time with it, digest it, maybe write some notes even. But for me, all I've got to say now is I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and New Year. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye for now.